Before we get into the dissection of the respiratory system, let's talk about what functions it has and what it is composed of.
You may know that your respiratory system is a network of organs that help you breathe, but do you know how it works? Some other functions that your respiratory system has are: it protects your airways, it allows you to talk and to smell, it brings air to body temperature and moisturizes it to the humidity level your body needs, it delivers oxygen to the cells in the body, and also it removes waste gases like carbon dioxide from the body when you exhale.
The respiratory system has many components, which include the esophagus, the trachea, the nasal cavity, the larynx, the oral cavity, the epiglottis, the diaphragm, the bronchi, the alveoli, the pharynx, the bronchioles, and the lungs.
All of this component makes up the respiratory system and help you transform oxygen into carbon dioxide.
In this video, we will be dissecting parts of a cow's respiratory system, explaining all the parts and explaining also how they work together to help an organism breathe.
Before the dissection, let's do a quick review of where the parts of the respiratory are located.
Here's a diagram of the respiratory system. Air enters through the nose or the mouth, passes through the nasal cavity or oral cavity into the pharynx, and then travels through the larynx. The opening to the larynx is guarded by the epiglottis, which tilts upwards when you breathe, but when you swallow food or any other substance, it tilts downwards. When it tilts upwards, the air enters the larynx, and when it tilts downwards, the food enters the esophagus. The air breathed travels past the larynx and enters the trachea. As we go deeper, we can see that the trachea has two divisions, one leading to each lung. These are called the bronchi. The bronchi then divide into several small tubes called the bronchioles. As the air travels through the bronchioles, it enters the alveoli, which is the part in the lung which transforms oxygen into carbon dioxide. Now that we have reviewed the system, let's get into the dissection. For the dissection, you need tools and techniques to keep you safe. Have in hand a mask to prevent any type of infection, some gloves, preferably rubber, and lastly, your lab coat. Make sure to have any adult guiding you during this procedure, and be careful with the sharp tools.
The materials that you need to prepare for the dissection are sharp tools like knives and scissors, your lab safety tools like your lab coat, face mask, and gloves. You will need something to inflate like a straw, and the most important is to prepare the organ, the lung. Now let's begin.
The first step for dissecting is to identify every part of the system, so we don't separate important structures. First, we locate the trachea. You'll notice that the inside of it has rings. After finding it, grab the knives or any other sharp tool and start cutting the trachea in the middle so you can see the structures that are inside of it. You will now be able to see two exits, which are called bronchi. You'll notice several small holes in between both bronchi. These are called bronchioles. As you cut deeper, you'll see more exits. Next, you will infiltrate the lungs. Use a tool that can be able to inflate them. In this case, we'll use a thick straw. Put one ending on the straw that fits into one of the bronchi and start blowing in order to inflate the lungs. This shows us that the trachea, which is connected to the bronchi, transports air directly into the lungs. As you see the lungs, you will notice that the right side is bigger than the left side. This is because the heart is located in the left side and it occupies space. Now that we have separated each part, it is easier to identify each of them.
Trachea. This is a cartilaginous tube that connects the larynx to the bronchi of the lungs, allowing the passage of air, and so is present in almost all air-breathing animals with lungs. It transports air to and from the lungs. Bronchi. They are the airway that lead from the trachea into the lungs and then branch off into progressively smaller structures until they reach the alveoli. They function primarily as a passageway for air to travel back in and out of the body. Bronchioles. This structure is connected to the alveoli. They are air passages inside the lungs that branch off like three limbs from the bronchi, the two main passages into which air flows from the trachea after being inhaled through the nose or mouth. Esophagus. Now the esophagus. This structure is important because it transports saliva, liquids, and foods from the mouth to the stomach. The esophagus runs behind the windpipe and heart. During swallowing, the food goes in here because the epiglottis tilts backwards to prevent food from going down the larynx and lungs.
Alveoli are tiny air sacs in your lungs that take up the oxygen you breathe in and keep your body going on. They are in charge of the gas exchange during the process of breathing in and breathing out. You cannot see them in the lungs because they are microscopic. Here are the parts that we won't include in the dissection. Nasal cavity keeps your nose moist by making mucus so you won't get nosebleed from dry nose. Larynx serves to protect the lower airways, facilitate respiration, and is the key role for phonation. Oral cavity serves as a secondary respiratory conduit, a site of sound modification for the production of speech and chemosensory organs. Diaphragm squeezes downward when you breathe in, making a vacuum that causes a rush of fresh air into your lungs. It relaxes outward, pushing on your lungs, letting them deflate. Pharynx acts like a passive way for food on its way to the stomach and for air in the route to the lungs.
And that's the respiratory system.
One of the diseases that affects the respiratory system is pneumonia. Pneumonia is an inflammatory condition of the lung primarily affecting the small air sacs known as alveoli. It causes the air sacs of the lungs to fill up with fluid. It can range from mild to severe depending on the type of germ causing the infection, your age, and your overall health. What causes pneumonia? Many germs can cause pneumonia, but the most common are bacteria and viruses in the air we breathe. Pneumonia-causing germs can settle in the alveoli and multiply after a person breathes them in. Viruses, parasites, bacteria, and fungi can all cause pneumonia. Common causes of viral pneumonia are influenza respiratory viruses and the virus that causes the COVID. A common cause of bacterial pneumonia is the Streptococcus pneumoniae. Fungal pneumonia is caused mainly because of the chronic health problems or weakened immune systems and in people who have inhaled large doses of organisms. And pneumonia by parasites occurs when they enter the body through the direct contact with skins, ingestions, or via an insect vector. That's why it's important to maintain hygiene at all times.
How can you prevent pneumonia? Simple. You can avoid smoking. This damages your lungs' abilities to fight off infection. Wash your hands often in warm, soapy water. Use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer when you can't wash your hands. Eat a healthy diet that includes lots of fruits, vegetables, lean protein, and fiber. Get a flu shot every year to prevent seasonal influenza. The flu is a common cause of pneumonia, so preventing it is a good way to prevent pneumonia. Do this to keep your lungs safe from this infection at all times. Number 1. The lungs and respiratory system allow oxygen in the air to be taken into the body, while also letting the body get rid of carbon dioxide in the air breathed out. This provides oxygen to the cells, which make your body function properly. Number 2. The respiratory system has different structures that help facilitate gas exchange. Without any of these structures, gas exchange would not even be possible. Like the epiglottis, without this structure, food could enter the lungs and damage the entire system. And lastly, the lungs are the main structure that suffer the damage, because most of the diseases and infections affect them. When you have pneumonia, your lungs are the ones that suffer the damage. That's why we need to prevent not only pneumonia, but other harmful infections and diseases.
And that is how you dissect a cow lung.
Thank you for watching us teach you about the respiratory system.